Hi, I'm Jennifer with the Kentucky Agriculture and Environment in the Classroom, and this is our pollination station, which is part of our Feeding Kentucky a STEM adventure. We're doing this demo video inside today because it's raining, so we didn't want anything to get wet or blow away. But this is a really fun activity because it teaches the students the importance of pollinators, the benefits of honeybees being our pollinators, because we obviously get some honey from that, and also what is the life cycle of a honeybee and how that all works together. So first, when they walk up, you can introduce your cute little bee friend. So we can call her Betty Bee, or you can name her whatever you want, but just remember she is a girl bee because most all honeybees are female. They're the ones that do all the work. So introduce her and ask the students why pollinators are important. Well, they're important because they help produce most of the food crops that we eat. So they spread pollen around from flower to flower, and that helps, once the flowers are pollinated, they're going to produce a seed and then a fruit, and then we have something to eat. Actually, 150 food crops depend on pollinators such as bees, other insects, birds, and that sort of thing. So this poster is here to help you learn a few facts about pollinators and honeybees, so you might want to look that over before the kids come. Then ask them why bees visit flowers. So we know they help by moving the pollen around, but why do they actually visit the flowers? And you can wait for some answers. But the main reason is that they are collecting the nectar and the pollen for food. They do this all year long. They will eat some of it as they're collecting for their energy and protein. They collect the nectar for energy. They collect any pollen. They'll eat that for protein. But they also want to save some for later, for when they do not have as much food in the wintertime. So that's what they'll take back to the hive or their comb, like this, and that's what they'll store. They also provide the nectar and the pollen for the baby bees when they're growing. So tell the kids that they are going to model how a bee visits different flowers, how they collect and save the nectar, and also how they're going to move pollen around and collect pollen for the hive and for food later. So here is our bee. Every bee is going to get one of these little droppers, and that becomes its tongue. And you can show them a picture of some bee anatomy. And they're going to visit these little flasks here in the middle of this is supposed to be a flower here in the middle. And they're going to suck up some water, that is the nectar, with their tongues. They are going to take it back to the comb, and their job is to fill up one of these cells in our honeycomb. You want them to pick one ahead of time and only fill that one up. And they'll be thinking, oh, well, we're going to fill that up pretty quickly, but it takes a long time for bees to collect enough nectar to fill one of these. So it's going to take several trips. You can have each student have a turn. They can do this simultaneously with their little droppers and fill up that one section. Then you can designate another student to kind of pretend like they are fanning the cell, because that it helps evaporate the water, and then it will turn into honey easier. And then once this is filled, they are going to use some wax from their little bellies, and we'll provide you a little cap, and they're going to place that on top of the cell. And that caps the nectar for the honey production. And that shows them that that's filled, and they're going to save that for the winter. Now the next part of this is they are going to show the movement of pollen from flower to flower. So now I want each student to visit one of these blue flowers. Pretend they're collecting nectar, and then bring the colored pollen over to this large flower in the middle. And then they can take one back to that same flower, a white one, and let each student do that a couple times. And they'll soon begin to see that they're moving the pollen around because now there's a lot more colors on this flower and there's some white in the flowers on the sides. Then our next step is they are going to collect some pollen for the baby bees. And when there's any extra pollen left on their little legs when they visit the hive, the worker bees will collect it, and they are going to actually push it in to the cell. So we'll do that on this side. We're going to push some pollen in here. Let each student have a turn doing that. And then that becomes the bee bread, and that's what the baby bees eat. So it's here that you can real quickly show the life cycle of a bee. The queen bee will lay an egg in the cell. It will hatch and turn into a larva, and the larva is what eats the bee bread. That will eventually transform into a pupa stage, and then after about 20 or so days, we then have a full-grown bee, and then it's her job to help contribute to the hive, collect nectar, collect pollen, take care of the baby bees, and so on. So the fun part of this is that when they've finished their tasks, all the kids get a sticker that says, "I was a honeybee today." Put that on their hands, and they can take that with them. So this is a really fun activity. Like I said, they get to model what happens at the beehive and also model the pollination of flowers.